Okay, let's go. Surprise game that I played this afternoon, and I forgot to analyze it, so I'll do it now. Um, this game is a very long game. I'm just going to go through it. I played against an FM apparently, and I played like an absolute legend. We'll see how I managed to play. So I prepped against a couple of people. I looked mostly at French lines in the French. Um, then I played against a different person than I expected, but I still played the French anyway. um, and the line that I prepped was this, just normal main line, and then bishop d7. I prepped this against my opponent because I thought that I could get a good game here. And knight g to e7. Knight f5, knight a3 is apparently the main line, and I saw my opponent played it. And you take, you can take here. And then queen b6, I believe the point was queen b6 to force this. And then you just go back and target this pawn instead. And I believe the line that I looked at went like this. Queen somewhere, I believe. Might have been knight g5 and castle. No, knight g5 isn't possible, of course. There was also an e5 thing. I can't remember. I mean, I did remember at the time, probably. But none of this happened. So I also looked at a couple of other options in case my opponent didn't go for the line that they usually play. Which fortunately means that I was kind of prepped for this line. And I really don't like the bishop b4 versions, which apparently I've been told that ancients also don't like this line, ancients don't like this line anymore either. And the line that you should just go for, and there's really no other play here, is knight f6, bishop g5, trade here, bishop at e7, and then trade everything, which did happen. And knight f3. And here I was on my own, and I thought that, I'm worse obviously, because I'm playing black. But I thought that I had a reasonable game to play still. There was a lot of things I could do. I could turn this into some sort of Caro-Kann, with with this structure, planting a knight here or something, or threatening to. That was kind of my plan. Alternative was this. Plenty of options. I also wanted to play b6, bishop b7, but there are some issues with that, namely bishop g5, bishop b5 check options. And then maybe I don't want to play c6 in that line if I play b6. So after b6, bishop b5, I wanted to play bishop b7. That's why I castled immediately. And then queen d3 happened. And b6 is still bad because of queen e4. And then I'm forced to play c6 again. So I played knight d7. Queen e4 happened anyway, which I thought was very interesting. My opponent is threatening like this basically, and this as well at some point. And I don't have no, not there. I don't have a knight here because my queen is there. So I forgot to turn on some music. Let's do that real quick. Yeah, music. Good. So yeah, I need to defend myself. And I saw that there are some issues if I want to do this later on because of queen or because bishop d3. So I had, I mean, I don't have to do it right now, but I decided to do it right now, and I calculated both of them. So queen f5, you get queen. You can also get queen h4 if you don't take. I think queen f5 you should just take. And then I take back, obviously. And on queen g6, if you take, then I take back and I'm totally fine. But now you can also play queen f4, attacking here, and threatening bishop d3. So basically I am forced to go into this line, which is probably fine. I decided to not do this, by the way. Oh, it's apparently very winning. I think I missed this idea, that I just take the back rank. I think I saw some ghosts. I thought this rook was still here while also being here. But I went for this line, and this is totally fine as well. My opponent long castled, and I played knight f6. Some second, I can defend my pawn this way. I can go here, and I also have this type of idea. And if my knight ever, for example, gets traded, then I solve my pawn structure and I'm probably better, honestly. Especially since I have the bishop here. I could also play this. I considered it not here, but at a later point. And I think that might also be interesting. But yeah. So, oh, I think I considered it here, but I also really like knight e4, basically forcing rook hf1. And here I also noticed that actually this isn't even all that great for me, because my knight is going to get attacked multiple times, and this pawn is kind of weak. There are some g4 threats, and I believe the line that I wanted to play was b6, bishop b7. But I was afraid of this and g4, which did exactly happen because I realized that it wasn't actually that big of a deal. b6, rook d1, bishop b7. Actually, g4 didn't happen here, but if g4 were to happen, the point is that I can just take, because I can trade here, lose a piece, and win that one. And I'll lose this pawn, but this is probably just a draw. My opponent didn't play g4 because of that. But like, this pawn is undefended, and g4 is on its way. My opponent played knight h4, which I missed, and I think is quite strong. Attacking this pawn, threatening to take here and here, and just crushing. Also, f3 is on its way, and g4 is on its way. I don't think f3 is that big of a deal. As long as I defend this pawn, obviously. I can't even play knight d6. So I basically had to play g6, which I did. And now g4, which I anticipated. I spent a lot of time on g6 actually because of g4 that I wanted to have something, and I wanted to have something against it. And I defended my pawn. This pawn is attacked twice and only defended once, and if it gets taken twice they also win a piece, so I can't even do this. They can just sack here and win a pawn, right? Yeah. Also they can just win a pawn there. No, but then I take... No, I can't. Never mind. Yeah, I can take... And I can't take, I can't push, because then I lose. So I managed to just barely find a solution, which was rook a to e8. And the point is that I'm threatening f2. So I'm just losing this, but I'm also winning this. And the point is that you can't take here, because then I take here. And you can't take here, because then I take here in between. There's also, after the game, my opponent also mentioned that they could play this. This wasn't the game went like this, and I took on f2. But bishop b5, I think the point was that I could play this. If you want to go to d3, I can take on f2 again. So bishop c4. And then I believe the point was knight d6. Attacking the bishop again and just taking this next turn. I think that was the point. And on bishop, I mean you're threatening my knight, but I can just do this. I think this is quite strong, quite good for me. Yeah, g takes f5 happened, and I took on f2. Bishop c4, actually threatening to win a pawn here. And my knight is kind of hanging. It isn't really, but my opponent is threatening this and winning a piece. So I just have to take. There's no way out of it. And now there is something else that's happening. I really need to keep this rook out of e7, because I lose everything. Also this is threatened. And my knight is weird, but yeah, it's okay. I can just barely manage all of those issues in a single move. And that move is, and I spotted it quite a while ago as well. I spotted it, the idea here. Actually, I spotted it here when I went for this g6, g4 line. That here I have g5, and the knight is trapped. Bam! Crazy bishop. I mean, it's of course solvable. Rook g1. It's not the only move. You can also go attack my knight in some way, because I don't really have a good square to run away to, I think. I'm fairly certain rook g1 isn't forced. We'll see afterwards. And here, I mean, I have to defend my pawn. I can play knight e4, I think, but then it's a bit iffy. Also, you get knight f3 again, so... And then maybe knight f3, I might have this. But this is really scary. So yeah, I just played h6, simple move. But that also allowed a flight square. My opponent can already go here, so I'm not really... it's not really a flight square. But my opponent does get knight to g6 now. There are two options here. Well, my rook has to move, of course. There are two main options. I really still want to keep this rook out of the e file, mostly e7. So rook e8 is one option, and the other one is rook e7. One of them loses a pawn, and one of them manages to survive, I think. So I had to play rook d8 because rook e8, knight e5, and there's just nothing I can do. I can sack an exchange, but I don't want to do that. Rook d8 at least puts pressure here, so after knight e5 I can take this pawn and trade a pawn, and that's okay. And my rook is active, so I'm probably doing fine there. Despite this being a passed pawn. It's also isolated, so I know, it's kind of a target. So rook d8 attacking this pawn, my opponent... there's also this interesting little funny. After knight e7, which looks like a normal move, the knight is trapped. So you're basically forced to play f6 here, which I think is okay. Still. Just wanted to show that. It's a little funny, but my opponent just played c3. Defending the pawn. And now I can unpin to allow to attack this knight, and after knight e5 I can play f6. We very quickly after the game discussed the idea of this, and I think I'm probably doing very well here because of bishop e4 attacking here. And there's no like issue here because I take and win a pawn. So that. Also knight e7 I play king f6 and the knight is trapped again, I think. Yeah, the knight's trapped again there. So my opponent really can only go one of these two squares. Which happened. My opponent decided to go to f4. And here I think I played this part a little inaccurate. It was based on a miscalculation as well. I saw basically the line I went into, except that I missed that my opponent could win at some point in that line. So the line I wanted to play, and we kind of played as well, was well, actually let's first look at what the threat is. The threat is actually this. So this check can't go there. I need to defend this pawn. So I have to do one of these and then f6, and then the pawn is a thorn in my position for the rest of the game. Also you can probably prevent bishop f3, so this knight will never leave. There's also maybe you can go here at times. But yeah, knight h5 is, I think, is a scary move, which is why I played king f6, so that I'm attacking this, trying to trade it for this pawn, which is not actually a great trade for me, but it's probably fine. But I thought at this point that after rook f1, pinning my knight, obviously, just winning it, basically, I thought I had king g4 here. In my calculation, which happened here. And I thought that I had this. Bishop f3 option, which I don't, because you can just take here and defend this bishop. So I lose a piece here. But I'm still... Wait, what? No, sorry. No, you have... Wait, really? Did I... Oh, no, you have knight f6 check here. Yeah, that's it. And then I lose a piece. You can also play knight f6 check here, I think. Yeah, probably, because I can't defend my knight anyways, and yeah. So it was So this was what I was hoping would happen, but actually what would happen is that I just lose a piece due to some knight f6 check at some point, which is very unfortunate. Which means that, it means that I have to go king g6 here to not lose a piece, but I do lose a pawn here, which is okay. I was up a pawn. So yeah, king g6. We trade and they take my pawn and infiltrated on the 7th rank. And actually there's a... I'm just going to lose a pawn, I think. I might have rook c8. No, actually I don't. I calculated that I don't have rook c8. So I'm just going to lose a pawn. And the idea was that... What was the plan after rook c... There was a plan that I had here. I believe it was here, yeah. To trade rooks, but then I lose this bishop in the end. So I just had to sack a pawn. And I played bishop d5. Here, kind of cheeky of course, but I offered a draw. Because my opponent had 6 minutes left and I had like 14. And we hadn't made the time control 40 moves yet. We're at move 28. So my opponent had 30 seconds per move, and with the increment my opponent had a minute per move. Just to survive to move 40. So I thought, you know, let's try that. It's kind of, yeah. Probably wasn't gonna happen, but was worth a shot. Here I also think that they played... I think this move they played an inaccuracy. I think they should just leave the pieces on the board. But they assumed that this was annoying, I think, and then I have 2 against 0. Because you can't defend this pawn, and I can also hold on to my pawns. Or... yeah. I do lose this one, but this 2 versus 0 is enough compensation, I think. Probably for a draw. So my opponent instead, I think this is... I think this might be the better chance actually. But my opponent just traded and took this pawn. And so this pawn is now a passed pawn, this deep 4 pawn. So I have to get compensation here, otherwise I just lose to that pawn. But first I need to defend as well, because 4 versus 1 is not really fair. So I played rook a5, forcing a3. Actually my opponent didn't even play a3 yet. My opponent played rook c6 first. I could have taken here, but then I think the pawn just runs. And so I don't think I could have taken. I think it was more of a defense move. So I played g4 instead. Now a3 happened to make the... That means that the king can now run, because otherwise I take the here and there and there, and if the king moved up. So yeah, a3, and my king needs to go here. So drawing chances with a rook in a rook endgame with down a pawn. The way to survive is that your king should be the one blocking the opponent's pawns, and the rook should be putting pressure. So I moved my king to defend, because my rook should be here actually, and my king should be there, sort of. Also I could do this slowly, which basically happened. I did play rook f5 in between, which means that we got this. So I claimed the 6th rank, which was important to me. Did allow d5 though. rook d6, c4. But now progress is kind of halted. This rook is kind of passive now. You can't ever play rook e6 because I take, and I think that endgame is at least a draw. Might even be winning for me, but I think it's just a draw. Just wanna quickly check, is this endgame winning for me? No, it's a draw plus for me. It's holdable for white, I think. I think it is what this means. Yeah, this. Hey, dude, this probably... Oh yeah, you can just win these pawns, so yeah, it's definitely just a draw. Just curious. Curious if my calculation was correct, which it is. King f5, king d3. My opponent has like 4 minutes left here, or 3. So, time trouble was not really that big of a deal. King d3, h5, king d4, h4, b4 to prepare c5. But my pawns are running actually. g3, they take, and play c5. Here we've gotten our time control. I spent, we gained half an hour, so I had like, what, 7-8 minutes left or something. I spent plus the 30 that we would get, so I spent like 10-11 minutes here, because I really didn't want to take, and I figured that I didn't actually have to. So the line I went for was rook g6, which threatens this, of course. And the joke is that if you start running, let's say with the c-pawn, I promote with check. We both promote with check, but I promote with check first. Which means that this is very much winning. So they basically have to go blockade my pawn with the rook in some way. This didn't happen. So they could choose either to block now, but then I'd play rook g5, king has to move back, and then I play king e5, and I think that's a draw. Or they tried this trick, but then they have to go back to e1, which did happen. g2, rook g1. Now my king is blocking the check, which I really need because the king is too far up, and I want to get to e5, because currently there's a wall here. Actually, there's also a wall here, but not there. Here, I really need my king here, but it's currently blocked. So I played king f5 here. c6, and apparently, and I think this position is still a draw. But I blunder not this move, but the next move, because I didn't realize the minutia of the position. So I think I still played the correct move, which was rook g4 check, forcing the king back and allowing my king to move in. So on king e3, which I assumed, I also calculated this. I have king e5, and I can just give up this pawn for this pawn, because I have rook c4 and I can win this pawn. Fairly certain of all of that. I think this is the way to hold this. And actually, you're still up a pawn as white, but my king is already here, so... And the white king is cut off. I think this is a draw, right? Yeah, that's definitely a draw. So that's the thing I calculated. King e3 made the most sense to me because you're running towards the pawn. Because there's also this, of course, which just wins the pawn. But then I also take this and I also win the pawn, and it's also still a draw. Okay, this is apparently still kind of playable for white, but it's just it's basically a draw, I think. So yeah, that's what I assumed. Instead my opponent went to d3, which, well, actually I didn't blunder here yet. I blundered on the next move, the move after. I play king e5 again, which, I mean, my king has to go here. And if my opponent spends some time here, like c7 is, yeah, c7 is basically mandatory to keep some play. And apparently here I missed the drawing chance. What I should do here, apparently, and my opponent mentioned it afterwards, I should play, I looked at this but I thought it didn't work. I should play rook g3 check. There are 4 moves. Well, these 3 are clearly draws, because then I can play rook, afterwards I can play rook g8 and you can't take because I take with check. But what I missed is that I can play rook g8 here as well, and if you take this pawn, which is kind of a deflection tactic, I can just take your rook, because I'm not in check and I win the rook here. So yeah, that's the that's the trick I missed, and instead I played rook g8 immediately, which lost this, and my opponent has rook g5 check, holding on to this pawn. King d6, king d5, and I just take the pawn. Actually, I can't take with the rook, because then I get check check and trade rooks, and that's just game over. I'll put that in annotation because I took with the king, obviously. Check, and I'm forced to go to b8, which kind of makes my king bad as well. Yeah, there we are. d6. And I mean, I've never seen this endgame before, but my opponent apparently said that this was clearly winning, and they played it. I mean, I don't know. I think they played it perfectly, and I think I also played it perfectly, but it's just winning. So I went to c1 and gave some checks. King c6 and d7. And here, maybe I have this, but I don't think so. No, you have rook e2 is the issue. And on a passing move, which kind of threatens this, so if my opponent doesn't actually win the game here, I can maybe take that pawn. Probably not even, but yeah. King e8 is the point, which escorts this pawn. And if I give a check like this, then you block with the rook, and if I give a check like this, you go to e7. I can't give any more checks, so I have to go back to c1, and then d7 here. Actually, no, not yet. First, d7 would be a draw, I think, because I just give a lot of checks. No, I give a check to here, and then if you want to prepare promotion, I can move with the king, and then this is a draw. So you have to first give this check, forcing me to go here, and then play d7. And what's also funny is that there's no checks here. This king can't ever enter the d file, also not the G file because I skewered the rook. But if I were to give checks like this, the king can just... So this is... can't go past these walls, and I keep giving checks with my rook. The king just moves up, and I lose. I also looked at this option, but then you have king e8 exactly, and I also just lose. So I resigned here. I think I played this like an absolute legend, but still just lost because my opponent is an FM and I'm not even close. So yeah, let's see. Take, yeah. 6, castle is correct, queen d3, and c5, apparently immediately. Yeah, that's probably fine. Rook d8 as well. I didn't like the knight on c6 actually. It's probably fine. I wanted to go here. Apparently I really have to move my queen somewhere. Queen f5 is fine. Queen h6, that's really weird to me. Yeah, this is fine. Knight f6 is correct. Knight e4 is good enough. Knight g4 apparently is also good. I looked at knight g4, but I thought it was just the same, but my knight is worse. d5, there are some lines with d5, because that blocks in my bishop. There's also lines with knight e5 to prevent my rook from defending my knight, but you can't do both. Which was interesting. Yeah. Ooh, interesting. Yeah, I have to find rook ae8 to keep an... Apparently I have an advantage here. And knight f2 only moves... Take, g5, h6, knight g6, rook d8 only c6, c3. I looked at b5 as well, but this knight e5 apparently. Yeah, king f8. That's king f8 is not a move for me. Rook d7 as well. Wow, I'm just better against an FM. I didn't expect to be better. I thought this was, I mean, a little bit, sure. Like, I thought this position would be like minus 0.1 or minus 0.2. Nothing crazy, but minus 1. Okay. So, I mean, none of these moves makes... Actually, knight e4 makes sense to me. Kind of. I just saw none of these ideas. I looked at nothing here. And none of this even makes sense to me. Why would you play king f8? Can I extend depth a bit? Not search time infinite, but let's say 30 seconds. See what it comes up with. Maybe nothing more than this. Because this is just, yeah. Bishop e4. I did look at bishop e4. That, I will have to admit that I did look at one of the moves that I could play. That is still maintaining my advantage. What's the point? Knight h5. Bishop d5 makes sense, I guess. Oh yeah, there's an issue on a2, so I might even be able to take. I don't think I am. No, maybe I am. Yeah, I can take. Oh, now you get rook e8 because of the bishop on e2. And let's say this, then I take the pawn, and on this I take the bishop, of course. Rook d5. Okay. Yeah, king f6. Apparently I'm still slightly, very slightly better, but I have to play king e7 and go to f8 still. Actually, that kind of makes sense. It prevents this. Now to think about it. And this plan doesn't prevent rook e7. Yeah, rook f1, forcing king g6. And yeah, we just trade, and rook takes f7. Bishop d5 is correct, which is interesting. And you're supposed to take. Yeah, okay. Now what? I apparently just have to sack my pawn. Apparently this is really bad for me. Yeah, there are a lot of c4 options which prevents my rook from going to the d-file. And my opponent fortunately never used any of them, but it was kind of scary. So this forces... Apparently this is bad. c4, king f5. Apparently I blundered it away already. That's crazy. h4. Rook f2 also makes sense actually. But yeah, now I do have a passed pawn. You have to play c5, which did happen, of course. g6 is best. c6, okay. And rook e5 is good enough. Apparently this is already losing. That's crazy. And king d3 only move. Oh my god. Because king e3, you have king e5, which I saw. And the game still continues, of course, but check, yeah, sure. Yeah, but this is basically a draw. And king d3, I mean, I assume that this... Yeah. And apparently... king b5. Now the trick doesn't work, so you can just win my pawn. And I can't take the rook. But I can't take the rook anyways. Because you infiltrate there. Crazy stuff. I was right! King d3 only move. What is that? And on king c3 I need to find b5, but I think I would have found that actually. Because it's a check and on the going to the c file. Yeah, king g8 forces you to take basically, and you have to find rook g5 probably. King c4 is also apparently winning. Because you go after the a7 pawn. But yeah, this is just sufficiently easy. Check. run with the rook. Check, check. Doesn't matter. Going to the e-file doesn't even help. Oh yeah, I remember why this doesn't help. This? Yeah, now you win the c-file and... maybe that's still... okay. If I stay on the 8th rank, king d7. Rook e7. Cool. Yeah, okay, I could have found that. King f8 is not a move that I'll find easily. But those are my chances, apparently. Yeah. Just got FM'd, I guess. See you in the next one, which will be in like 2 weeks.